I guess I don't always talk about this a lot. So my grandmother actually started a jewelry business in Lower Manhattan where like you're kind of like this young kid that's just like, what is even happening in this wild world? And there's like the mafia around you and all sorts of like crazy stuff. And you're like, huh, I wasn't expecting Brian to talk about the mafia today, but as Brian does for
Okay.
a while. I think they made some movies out of some of the folks that were in and around there, but
I've probably seen a few.
never died. Yeah, I didn't die. That's why I'm here on the podcast today. So I think that that was very interesting because I got to see humanity and human behavior up close.
Welcome to Impact Us All, the business podcast for making substantial change. I'm your host, Jimmy Newson, the Impact Influencer. Join me as I explore the stories, strategies, and insights of entrepreneurs, industry experts, and national and global brands that care. We focus on the initiatives that make a significant difference in communities around the world and bring you innovative techniques for overcoming challenges and barriers in your business journey. This is a place for real-world lessons, actionable advice, and inspiring insights to help you elevate your unique selling proposition for professional and personal growth. Stay tuned as we dive into this week's impactful strategies. Let's move forward together because together we can impact us all. In this episode, please allow me to introduce you to our amazing guest, Brian Wallace. Brian is the founder of NowSourcing, an infographic expert, a Google board member, and an international keynote speaker, featured in the New York Times, Forbes, and Mashable, and lastly, an advisor for South by Southwest. We're back with another extremely exciting episode of the Impact Us All Business Podcast. And I am your host, as always, Jimmy Newson, the Impact Influencer. And I got a gem for you today. I have an amazing individual. I had the pleasure of meeting a couple of years ago, maybe 3 years ago, at the SEMrush digital. I almost got that wrong. At the SEMrush, Global Marketing Day.
That's the one.
And yeah, that's the one. And we were, it was an exciting day. I actually had an amazing time. It was an amazing event. They didn't do it again. Maybe they will do it again. We'll see what happens. But at the end of the day, I got a really incredible relationship out of it. Brian Wallace, who we have here. And so, Brian, first of all, thank you for agreeing to be on the show.
It is only my pleasure, Jimmy. I've been looking forward to this all day and all week, like and like you said, meeting you was one of the highlights of that event for me. I think that, all to SEMrush's credit in terms of the crowds and content and all of that, I think that was all fabulous, but I think they and you and I, to some extent, are great at community building, and we are proof positive that that resonated and shone through, and that's why we're here.
Absolutely, absolutely. And so before we get into impact, of course, tell us a little bit more about you. Let's let everybody know a little bit more about Brian Wallace.
Oh boy, well, welcome to the Cult of Brian. I will be your host and tour guide and your chief troublemaker. So, born in Brooklyn, but the accent did not stick because I later lived in the suburbs. Now, for the New Yorkers listening, you are going to say that I'm from upstate New York, and then I will fight you because I will say that on a good day without traffic, it's a 45-minute commute to the city. And for the non-New Yorkers, the city, when we refer to the city, we refer to New York City as apparently the only city in the world. But I grew up in Rockland, where I just kind of sound a little non-regional, like I'm supposed to view the weather or whatever. Went to school in upstate New York, where I met my wife. I spent about a decade in technology, but I like communicating a heck of a lot more than being like the customer service representative that's got to like go answer all the hordes of angry people stranded at airports for the CrowdStrike bug. No thanks. Right. And I don't think people always really care or understand how technology works. It's supposed to be like an appliance. Do you care how your refrigerator works? No, like it's got your milk and your eggs and whatever you got in there, and it just runs. You're going to be mad when it doesn't. And I feel like all too often that is one of the downsides of technology. The aspirations of technology are immense and wonderful, and it just doesn't always go the way that we want it, as we all kind of
Absolutely.
all of our router restarting, and fingers crossed we don't need that right now because we're kind of in the middle of doing a podcast. So eventually I left the technology industry and the East Coast and spent quite a while, more than a decade and a half now, in kind of the border between the South and the Midwest. And I kind of changed my area of focus from working for other people in technology to working for myself and building a business within kind of marketing and technology. Early on, we focused on social media back when that was the Wild West, and everybody, I guess, thought they were good at social media. And when everybody thinks that they're good at it, it's probably time to go, or probably time to niche down and find what you're truly good at. So there was a critical moment in time, say around 2007, 2008, early on in the business, where I found that we had a certain knack for really telling really good stories, doing them visually, and then some level of having a pulse for what the internet finds interesting. So coming from the construct of understanding how systems think and tick and act and do all of that, then with the advent of social and marketing and meeting journalists and understanding algorithms, social media networks and all of that, I said, there's kind of something to it about making things, I'm going to use the phrase, I'm sorry, go viral. Not everything should go viral. Right? We already had, like, Jimmy and I kind of met at the tail end of the pandemic, so we don't need that kind of go viral. But much like I'm sure we'll get into later, impact doesn't resonate if it doesn't go anywhere. So impact matters, or virality matters, or influence matters, or the word I like, which is renown, because influence has kind of been ruined by influencers. They get a little too much, and they tell everybody to show up at the fire festival and this and that. We're not going to throw shade at anybody in particular, but you get what I mean. So right around that critical time, like right during the housing crisis that was wrecking the world, I found that there were like a couple people in the world doing these things called infographics. And I said, wow, this is kind of the perfect storm of all the things that I really enjoy doing and understanding some of the stuff behind the scenes. So I wasn't the first person in the world to do it, but I was maybe third or fourth. And we kind of took that and ran with it and kept on going with it. Now, in modern time, come 2024, I fell into an interesting opportunity to throw an innovation summit.
Okay.
Again, kind of like that Midwest South region, not exactly where we are in Cincy, but because I've also spent a lot of time on different advisory boards, notably to the Conversation South by Southwest, which is an enormous world festival that's kind of single-handedly built a lot of technology movements and impact-driven movements, such as Twitter and Foursquare and geolocation and live streaming and Giving Tuesday. That's a pretty good resume for anybody.
Absolutely.
Kind of doesn't happen anywhere on Earth. Like usually you meet some cool people like we met, or you do a couple business deals, but you don't build movements. That's pretty rare. So I've been trying to build the nucleus of bringing really cool, interesting, talented, and different individuals together in a very interesting and underrated setting. We successfully did that back in May, and we actually are just rolling out next year's event also this coming May. That's called the Innovate Summit.
Yeah, again, we've had numerous conversations, which is why I realized I had to have you here on the podcast.
Might as well record a couple instead of just having all the fun ourselves, right?
Yeah, you were dropping some gems. I was like, holy crap. All right, I didn't think about that.
Yeah.
And so let's start with the most obvious question. What does impact itself mean to you?
Gosh, impact. So I think people understand, everybody's seen those visuals where there's like the tip of the iceberg, right? You've seen these all over Instagram and wherever you're hanging out, doom scrolling on social instead of just having fun with us. So you see like the couple words that are at the top of the iceberg, and then there's all this stuff that's like the 80% easily. And I think people don't understand what an impact that an individual can have. When you radiate out and you put it out there for good, where you show up very giving, very generous, without really an expectation of return, you have an impact. But what does the world care about? They care about blue check marks and how many followers we have. And, oh no, I should take my content down because not enough people hit the like button. When did we fall asleep and fall prey to vanity metrics? Because they do not have an impact. I guess they have some... They take up some of your rent in your brain about, social psychology. This story has 20,000 reads, so it's good, and this one has 20, so it's bad. Without context, I guess that makes sense, but it doesn't. It actually doesn't. So I think that I really like to push people to aspire to be more of the people kind of leading that movement and effort. I think a lot of people think that impact of innovation is just supposed to come from the C-suite or the founder. Oh, I can't do that. I'm just an intern. I can't do that. I'm just any identifiable race, religion, age, demographic, location. That's not for me. Those are just the talented people that went to business school. Really going to teach it? Like, no, everybody has the ability to do impact.
And that all of that is amazing. Again, there's so much consciousness going on here. There's so much that you go deep. Again, this is why I wanted to have you on, to be able to get your take, because again, it is so unique in what you're doing. So how did this all start? Let's go back. What led you down this path of where you are? So we can either look at it from the standpoint of your overall organization, or let's look at the Innovation Summit. Because again, I wish I could have attended. I had a prior engagement. Hopefully, I could do this next year.
I mean, come on, you can
exactly. So
now, come on. I don't want to hold you to it on your own podcast. That would be a little mean.
No,
you really
crazy.
We need you. Let's just say that. Yeah.
All right. Well, here we go, people. We're all going. All right. So
everybody's welcome. Show on up.
Talk to me about how you got through the career path. What were some challenges? What were some wins? Let's start with the challenges first.
Challenges. Okay. Well, I guess I don't always talk about this a lot. So my grandmother actually started a jewelry business in Lower Manhattan, where like you're kind of like this young kid that's just like, what is even happening in this wild world? And there's like the mafia around you and all sorts of like crazy stuff. And you're like, I wasn't expecting Brian to talk about the mafia today, but as Brian does.
Okay.
Wow. I think they made some movies out of some of the folks that were in and around there, but
I've probably seen a few.
Never died. Yeah, I didn't die. That's why I'm here on the podcast today. So I think that was very interesting because I got to see humanity and human behavior up close. People that would come from all over the world. And it's just a very interesting thing to kind of be like directly into sales as a child. But I think that was the kind of business that like your family doesn't necessarily want you to get stuck in, and they want you to be more of a professional or whatever. So it was kind of challenging to kind of go through that. I've also always been kind of labeled like special because I was gifted in school, and all that does is like ruin your brain and make people overly expect everything from you. But I think a lot of people didn't actually like me for being smart. So I decided at a young age that it was really important to understand people more than telling everybody everything that's on your mind or being the smart person in the room. I think the power of being understated is something that everybody needs to take note of, because ego absolutely removes you from the world and it makes you chase things that don't matter.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Now I think about that.
Video clips on and things like that as we go.
Yeah, that is marinating in my brain right now.
Yep.
That is such a profound statement. And so, what have been some valuable lessons you've learned as you've gone do this transformation of yourself, and whether it's studying people or creating the summit or making the impact that you want to make?
Well, you're so great. I'm going to tell you more stuff about my background that everybody always skips over because they go straight to the professional journey. So I didn't grow up like a lot of other people too, because I'm one of two siblings. My brother is actually 7 years younger than me and profoundly developmentally disabled. So we're talking like mental age of maybe like a 6-month-old, cannot talk, he's not aware of like anything in the world around him, doesn't know who I am. And it's very sad. So it's like, I have a profoundly different understanding of how people relate. I remember when I was in college and I'd come home for breaks and stuff like that, I would actually work for the organization that took care of them. And it's very interesting to kind of be like a witness to different people interacting with each other and observing things happening. And I remember there was this one time, I don't even know why I'm telling this, but I think it's actually really interesting. It's just like, it helps inform how I think. And it's kind of an interesting and fun story. So I was working at the organization that takes care of my brother, and I was working with kind of like more the geriatric population at the end of that system. And we brought some of these great residents out to the local mall, and, you know, they probably look a little bit different, act a little bit different. They might have different mannerisms and hand gestures, and maybe they're not conditioned to be perfectly, buttoned up in society like we're all supposed to be good little boys and girls and do things in a certain way. They're not following that because it's not important. So
Right.
I remember we were getting ready to go into the mall, and I remember one of the guys sometimes kind of had a loud mouth and wasn't necessarily thinking about how to look great socially. And there were these two ladies that were just staring at him. Do you think you should do that? Like, he's the one with the disability. What's their excuse? And then he just said something that, like, we're all thinking out loud that somebody should have said from the back. And he just, like, screams out. He's like, I hate that lady. He used a little bit of profanity, too, but I don't know what kind of rating your show is, so we'll leave that out. And I'm just thinking, like, good on you, man. So, I don't know. Like, a lot of times, I think we also have to just, like, put all of these different fronts and airs. And I think a lot of people need to understand that people want to know the authentic self. And I think a lot of us hide behind that, and we do the world a disservice by not being genuine to who we are, and it shows. Because what do? Did we waste 1 second, Jimmy, talking about the weather, sports ball, soap opera theater, stupid politics crap that's there to divide us more than unite us? No, we did not, and please don't. We got straight
Absolutely.
Because we get straight to it, because there's more to like.
Wow.
So
Yeah.
that'd be a good model to kind of talk into. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, I mean, again, you touched on so many things. So let's get into that professional side of things with you,
Yeah.
and look at, you've worked with a lot of organizations. Again, you've worked on both in the organization and then from your from an outside perspective.
Yes.
What was that like? And let's maybe tie into that transition. What was that point where you were like, okay, this has got to be the Brian Wallace show?
Sure. So I like having autonomy to really flex a lot of creative thought and ideas. I enjoy research and development and being a visionary and thinking about what's next more than I like following orders of people that aren't really going to fully appreciate creative talents. And I think that I've been in a variety of organizations, large and small, before I left the W-2 world. Some were local government, some were Fortune 500, some were startups, some were small companies. And I really feel like when I have more autonomy, I thrive. And I found that there's kind of like a double strike on me. That one, I was kind of relegated into technology, which is notoriously known for the absence of communication, right? I think there's a lot of like superiority where it's like, haha, I know the technology, you don't. I'm going to hide behind acronyms. Yeah, but no, like they're not smarter than all of humanity. It's just they've got different gifts and talents. It's just a different industry like everything. Technology is almost not even its own industry. It's a subcomponent of a lot of what makes the world work, right? It's an ingredient in the overall mixture. Song of the universe.
And that is so true. Especially when people talk about AI like it's its own thing. I go, AI is not really a thing. It's a part of a process.
Yep. If you and I were building contractors, we would have a tool belt and we would have a hammer and some nails and measuring tape and a little AI box for the metaphor.
Absolutely.
Yep.
I agree with you 100%. And so, so when we're looking at technology, and again, this is because I'm a tech head too, but I like what you said in regards to the fact that people can sometimes hide behind it. But at the end of the day, I think the best opportunity is to embrace technology, but still work. And again, I'm saying this from being an introvert, ladies and gentlemen. So it's not like I'm born to be this guy that's in the front, but we can play that. We can use that to our advantage and get the best of both worlds. And I'm hoping I'm on the right path of where you may have been going with that.
Got to give the introvert the floor. If you already said you're an introvert, you're like, when else are we going to get the guys to talk? So what people don't realize about introverts is like an introvert can just like get on stage and like totally kill it and do all this stuff. And then like they just need like all this recovery. And I feel like first chapter in my life, I was very introverted. And I kind of forced myself to not be eventually because I felt like a lot of people didn't get it or wouldn't listen. I'm probably like a lot of people think I'm an extrovert, but I think I'm an ambivert. I think that
Okay.
people have the ability to completely reshape how they are hardwired. It takes a
Yeah.
heck of a lot of work, and usually you need horrible things to happen to you to confront reality and the status quo bias to not be working for you. But I think there were just numerous things in life that I really, I kind of got how people were and intelligence and being good at stuff and memorizing things and all of that. But that's kind of empty of a practice. I think understanding humanity, being relatable to people without changing who you are is important. So I value the contributions of people that are both on the introvert and extrovert side. And I really think it's interesting when people like try to kind of play both of those things. I thought it was super interesting that you said that, so I wanted to bring that up.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely, and I've been called ambivert as well, and and like you said, yes, some things probably do happen. I think some you get fed up, or or definitely something that pushes you, because, and then I still think that I lean more introvert, because then I'll get into a situation where I just don't want to talk to anybody, and I'm like, yep, there's that introvert. He's back.
I mean, sometimes people are just horrible, and I don't blame you. But yeah, no, I get it. Joking.
Yeah, and I'm even talking about networking event. I absolutely hate with a passion networking events. And I'm just like, hey, how are you? And, and it's just, and I made a conscious decision that I have to be on stage in most situations, because I'd rather people come up to me than I'm in my element. And I know that could be cheating a bit, but I don't care.
But you're good at speaking. So why is it cheating if you're good? You're supposed to be there. But what you just said there, I think, and I'm not the host of the show, is a great.
Yeah, that's all good.
I think it's a wonderful segue to what you asked about the event, if I may.
Okay.
Because you put it perfectly, that you hate networking. Here's the secret for everybody listening. Everybody hates networking. Everybody hates networking. Even the people that say that they're master networkers know that it is not properly structured. And that is part of the genesis of why I bothered to try to do this event. Because events don't even understand what business they're in. An event exists to collect a nice show reel and a nice PR photo of fancy people smiling in a happy, diverse setting where we're holding drinks and smiling about who knows what. Okay, and then sponsorship, and look at all the people that are coming. Here's a slide deck, and we're not really going to check in with you. But I think an event's job is to be more like the hospitality industry, like the Ritz-Carlton, who invented the 5-star Diving Training Institute. And when Apple decided to go retail full scale, they went to hospitality school. They didn't go to Starbucks retail school to learn how to, check all your groceries on the conveyor belt, you throw them on the floor or whatever and sneer at you and be in a bad mood. Because you know the difference when you walk into a store. You know who cares about you, and you know who couldn't care less, or who could care less, or however that analogy.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is such that in itself. I mean, they went to hospitality school and not retail school. That's taking care of the customer.
Exactly.
Making them feel here when they might even come in here.
Right.
And elevating the difference. They're not buying an iPhone or an iPad. And people go, why do they pay that much money? It's because of the service.
They're going to pay that money and smile and not wait in line and be in and out in 2.5 minutes. I think it's kind of not as good as it used to be, but I'm talking about when it first came out, it was flawless. We could go through the whole of that, but I don't want to spend the whole show on that. But
I'm going to be implementing some hospitality strategy in my brain now. But even more conscious. Not even just for me, but for the people around me.
Yes.
Because it does give you a whole different way of how you interact with people.
It is.
How you treat people.
Right.
And then how you end up coming across.
Exactly. And that's everything.
Yeah. That in itself is impact in itself. That to me, I think it was worth the whole conversation.
Oh, good.
Not that you didn't drop so many incredible bombs here, but that was amazing.
Yep. Well, thank you.
So let's talk about some of your proudest moments, and you've again, and you can mention this to relationship to any of the organizations you work with, some outcomes that have just been, wow, this is exactly what I wanted or what I needed type of scenario.
Okay. So imagine a Venn diagram. And this is good for people who have small businesses, that are entrepreneurs, that are looking to kind of run their ship, steer their ship. They're already there. I think that the world cares about these two circles that sometimes overlap in the Venn diagram.
Okay.
People love when you've worked for big names, and people have loved when you've done things that are legendary. And usually it's not both, because, as you know, when you work in a big brand is like a multi-headed hydra, and like some of them are larger than countries and stuff, and you don't always get to do the coolest thing with them. So sometimes when you have your big wins, personally, professionally, whatever, it kind of falls on maybe not as much as a well-known brand, but you still did something amazing. Like if we talk about SEO or something, and we, outranked everybody and got a bunch of traffic and referrals and backlinks and all that stuff, you could talk about something amazing, but maybe it wasn't like the most well-known place in the world. But every now and then in your life, in your career, you get to do something that crosses the Rubicon between the two things. And I love talking about one thing in particular. I mean, in terms of my wins, I think like family, spirituality, like evolving as a human, being a good global citizen, all go completely before everything that I'm about to say. But you asked something specific, so here you go. So, disclaimer, all of that is
absolutely.
all of that is
family is everything. I can't go a day without my daughter.
Well, good. I'm sure she thanks you for that, and probably is better off with that. Yes. So once upon a time, there was a particular basketball player that was relatively unknown at the time, but is now very well known. But I'm not going to read the story right at the beginning. Players agent came to us and said, we see all this stuff that you're doing with infographics and impact and influence and renown. So we've got Jimmy's words and Brian's words combined. Now we've got a really nice recipe for success. And they're like, all right, so like this guy, he's getting underplayed. The coach isn't playing him. I think he's going to move to a different team. And he's definitely going to be like an amazing breakout all-star rookie, but he's probably going to get like a terrible contract. Please fix this. And we're like, okay, we don't really do that all the time. Sort of a big ask, but you know how it is. You get all these like marketing clients and stuff, and people want everything over the moon, but it's always worth a shot. But this time it worked. So once upon a time, before that happened, there was a concept where if sports and analytics had a baby, they'd be called sabermetrics. And they all hang out, MIT and stuff like that out in Boston. So once upon a time, sabermetrics took over the sport of baseball and then slowly took over all the other sports. So for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, great book and movie called Moneyball that does a good job.
Love that movie. I almost watched it last night. That's how much I love that movie.
You were preparing. Yeah, I could like literally be like playing that in the background while I'm working. It permanently lives in my head. For those of you, just to spoil the movie for everybody, but to just give you the construct of where I'm going with it. So whether you've seen it or not, I'm not going to ruin it for you. The concept is baseball was archaic, where you had 150 years of coaches and scouts that would look at a person and say, this person looks the part. And appearances, as we know, are not everything. They can be deceiving. And you miss so many great people because they throw the ball funny, or they don't have the athletic physique, or you don't think they're a supermodel, and people would get passed over for stupid reasons. But then they basically systematized it, used data science to say the culmination of bringing together, I think they say in the movie, the island of misfit toys, like Toy Story.
Yeah.
And then you build a better team on less money. And then the teams that couldn't compete with small budgets would beat the teams with bigger budgets. And then it just became an arms race, whatever. Now everybody's got their sabermetrics. But for whatever reason, and a lot of his personalities and stuff, it was very slow to get into places like basketball. So we told a really cool story about how this world of a completely different paradigm shift of taking an industry and completely turning it on its head. It was heresy. Nobody liked it. All the insiders, it's like, what are you, crazy? You're going to trust Google instead of me who stares at humans and predicts the future. I don't get how like you can do that. I mean, granted, to be fair, I think there is a lot to say about the world and realm of intuition, but
Mm-hmm.
there's also a lot to say about the left and right of your brain. The creativity, the ability to harness data and triangulate it and synthesize the two is a lot. But before I start getting like all weird and abstract, let's get back to the show. So on the basketball side, we said, hey, world, this new paradigm shift is coming to basketball. Case in point, look at this guy. Pound for pound, stat for stat. He's hitting it with the best of them. And he's about to get a bad contract, so where should he go next? And then we start showing it all over the internet, and people start talking about it on ESPN, and you got all these commentators talking about it, and everybody on the internet's like, wow, we never even thought of this guy. Why are we even talking about this? Where did this come? And everybody's like, he's running around, and then the trade deadline comes, then he gets a $64 million deal. And then 180 million on top of that, and he just signed again with a new team. What did he just get? He got like another like 26 mil a year for like a 2-3 year extension.
Not too
And he's a
shabby.
household name now. This is Tobias Harris. For those of you who don't follow basketball, if you ever watched the Adam Sandler movie, The Hustle, a few years ago, he was in that too. One of the main characters. And a heck of a guy.
That's what made me think when you mentioned the Mafia earlier. That was that movie.
The Mafia? Wait, where are we going now?
I think it was the Hustle movie. Was Adam Sandler? Was that the one with the jewelry?
No. That's a different one. I think Adam Sandler just has like this ridiculous contract with Netflix that he just has to make as many movies.
Okay.
No, that is.
I forgot the name of
no,
it.
no, I know what you're. No, that's Uncut Gems. So yes.
Yeah, that was crazy.
I'm
That
not
movie was
actually
crazy.
Adam Sandler, although apparently Adam Sandler is doing 2 different movies about my life. I don't know.
Oh, what?
No, I'm completely. That part is completely.
Oh, okay.
No, I'm just.
All right, you making that one up.
I will tell you.
But what?
Nice little Easter egg in the movie.
Okay.
The main character, like the boa guy, he's like playing like this street game where he's like just inviting everybody like to the park and everybody's playing against him. And there's this part when Tobias goes directly against them and Tobias just destroys a 3 over his head. And you see this middle-aged guy just sitting there clapping. And you don't know because you just think it's like some guy in the crowd. That's his dad. His dad cameos in the movie. Isn't that amazing? I love that.
That is great.
I love
That is great.
Oh my gosh.
Now, I like what you said. I mean, again, Moneyball is definitely one of my top movies of all time. I must have seen it at least 5, if not 6 times, at least 5 times.
I love it.
And I can't. And I think and I'm one of the people go, how can you continue to watch? I go, they go, how can you continue to watch a movie over and over again? I go, it's the story.
Right.
And it's like reading a book or going to your favorite place to watch the sun. I go, that's how these type of situations play out. And I go, it's that story for confirmation to continue to keep you on the path. And it's just a great message in order to. But I think the key here that I take away from it and what you said about the company that you mentioned is the data. And especially in a day and age of technology, I talk about, I don't make as many decisions with my gut anymore. As much as I love it, I pretty much feed it more than anything else. But if you really want more predictability out of your, as part of the outcome, you have to start looking at the numbers.
It's true.
And the numbers are there, and that's what they were able to tap into. And they're like, look, regardless of what I think, the numbers say this. Which way what makes more sense to go with, especially when everything is on the line?
So we gave people one mental construct that you've solidified quite well, that I agree. It makes a lot of sense to do the numbers, think through the numbers. But sometimes numbers don't help anymore because you can get decision paralysis by overdoing the level of data. So let's pick on another book. So Malcolm Gladwell, who's a pretty good modern day storyteller. I don't know that he originates everything, but I think he does a good job telling the story and curating it. So for all his positives and negatives, we're going to bring up a cool book that he wrote within the last decade or so called Blink. And Blink talks all about the power of intuition. Intuition, as I would define it, is not the way that people think about going with their gut. People think they're not supposed to trust their gut. But what happens, like if you went to the gym, I don't go to the gym a lot, but like let's say, a person out there that isn't me goes to the gym a lot. So let's say you do that with your mind, and let's say you continue to gain expertise and excellence in a field. You're an art historian, right? Maybe you build ninja fryers. I don't know, whatever, right? Whatever you do, you get better over time. Those are two really different things. That was pretty good.
Yeah.
Good varying metaphors, I do say. So applied wisdom over time equals intuition. So a lot of times a person who's an expert can't even put into words what's happening in the trapdoor subconscious of their mind. So one of the things that they talk about in the book, and I'm not going to ruin the whole book, but just a little teaser, just so people get it. It starts off with a person that finds some ancient Greek statues, I think it is. And he remembers feeling revolts, like he's going to throw up. And he's like, I can't really explain this, but I feel sick because I just know this is a fake. And then fancy museum guys write like 100-page report. And then like they're wrong and he's right. So a lot of times, because we have so much expertise and our brains are incredible, and we so much so that we don't even understand what's going in them, and they're ours. Like, how does that even work, right? So there's so much higher level stuff that's happening in the blink of an eye that we can't explain, that sometimes we like to justify that we're fancy and we wear bow ties and we wrote a 100-page research paper and then we read every word of it, but then people don't. They talk about books, but they didn't read them. Like I've seen studies that like once a book's past like 250 words, people don't even buy them anymore. Like there's a predictable risk at writing a book like one, and then like every 50 pages after, there's a great probability that people will never open it. I don't want to read it to conclusion. So a lot of times people like to take solace into putting data into everything. But the problem is that there's so much data in the world that you could cherry pick and organize and obfuscate and nicely leave things out that it doesn't tell enough of the story. So I am a big believer that you have to interlace I'm going to interlace better, storytelling and
You do that.
Yeah. So just those of you who like to be on stages, I consider a podcast a stage also. If you're not kind of funny or at least absurd, at least like every few minutes, you kind of lose the audience. So mainly I'm here to entertain Jimmy, but yeah.
And you're doing a good job.
To interlace and harmonize those kinds of things are incredibly hard, but well worth it because you're getting the best of both worlds.
And I love that. And it's funny because I guess we don't really, sometimes we get so focused on doing things and getting things done that we forget that we are multifaceted. I know I did for a long time. I like structure. And I like, I don't want to say facts, but I like things to be in an order. And especially, but when I sit back and look at myself, I don't think about having fun when I'm doing what I do. But when I sit back and look at myself, I go, that guy actually looks like he's having fun. But I feel very structured, inside. And I'm going, I can actually let that other part of me play a little bit more. And like you said, so you have that. So I guess, this kind of causes a bit of an issue with me with my whole I don't do much with my gut, because I guess from the way you explained leveraging your gut and intuition, I do that. I just don't give it enough credit.
Yeah. Let's build on what you said about multifaceted. So a lot of people think that they're engineers and project managers and computer science, programmer people, and they think that they're not creative. But everybody who is here on Earth is we're all creative beings. So I find that even the people that work in the most like plain Jane, boring, esoteric, high frequency number stuff fields want to have some level of creative output and passion projects and stuff like that. And I think so creativity and innovation can hit you in a moment, and it's not linear. And I think a lot of people don't give it enough time and space and focus to breathe. I remember seeing a
Okay.
video on YouTube, and I can't remember enough about what to put in YouTube to find it for you. So maybe we could look for this in show notes later. But I'm just going to describe the
Okay.
construct for you as an
Sure.
example. So the scene opens up where you're looking at what looks like an elementary school, and you just see a classroom of kids, not too old, 10, 12, whatever. And the assignment from the teacher is draw a clock. Is everybody a
Okay.
great artist when they're 10 or something? Of course not. I'm not picking on kids, but like you don't have enough practice. You're probably not there yet. So maybe if you're some savant, you're amazing, but that's the rarity. But here's the thing, whether they were good or bad, whatever that even means, they were given like a minute to draw the damn clock. And I'm thinking like, what the heck am I even, that's terrible. That's so mean, right? So what do you get? You just
Hmm.
get like all of these terrible pieces of art, if we can be that mean. And I don't mean to be mean, but you understand where I'm going.
Right.
But then there was another exercise, and the teacher said, okay, now you have 20 minutes. What do you think the creative output was at just a broad swath of humanity of little kids when they had 1 minute and 20 minutes? It was night and day. And that's the world right there. We ourselves don't let our inner child creativity and childlike innocence, whatever you want to say. Like you said, like you don't just watch the movie, you're watching it in like the spiral of time in your mind. You remember that place. Memory is spatial. There's music in it. There's so many different things that like cement a memory in our mind that we relive in our lives as a construct for good or bad, or gets us into the mood, or gets us out of a funk, or gets us to restart or do new things that we don't. I'm not saying that your calendar has to have a 5 hour meeting with yourself called playtime.
Hmm.
But maybe it should, because I think that a lot of people don't give themselves enough credit to allow this to happen. That's really why I enjoy doing what I do on the digital side with infographics and PR, but now on the more physical in-person side of the Innovate Summit, because in my mind, it's all the same thing. It's just this creative technology where you're left braining it and you're right braining it, and you're bringing people and systems and outlets together to have more impact, as I heard a person named Jimmy talk about.
Wow, that is crazy. I want to. I'm going to go a little bit off the beaten path of, but
Wherever
not
you
for
want, yeah.
you, but from
Right.
me. And I mean that with love
Let's
and
add
all great
32 things
ways.
that don't go together. Yeah.
And I want to tap into innovation for 1 second. I had a gentleman on just recently that I definitely think you two need to meet. Name is Steven Shapiro, and he's all about innovation. And I'm
Great.
realizing, your conference about innovation. Talk to me about innovation from your perspective.
Yes. I'm really glad you brought this up because I don't know that we would have naturally landed on it.
Mm-hmm.
I think that people sometimes don't understand things because they assume a word means X, but really it means Y. So for us to have a real good, honest conversation about anything, we need to set the stage and actually define things because
Mm-hmm.
people get it wrong so often. And here's what matters when we talk about innovation. More often than not, people get into the misnomer that innovation is technology. And I'm not here
Okay.
to say that innovation isn't technology. In part, it can be technology, but you don't have to have one thing of technology to be innovative. A thought can be innovative. A movement can be innovative. Things can be very low tech. It reminds me of there's a guy by the name of Saul Gorman who
Mm-hmm.
everybody in today's world doesn't really know or think about, but they know what he built. He was the guy who invented TED Talks before he
Oh,
sold it
wow.
to Anderson. And if you ever watch Saul's TED Talk, it's not a TED Talk about TED Talks. And by the way, TED is an acronym. It's not a guy named Ted. Everybody assumes like, I guess there's this guy named Ted and he just talked a lot. No, TED actually stands for Technology, Education, and Design, I think. Pretty sure. All
Mm-hmm.
positive. So Saul gives this off the wall talk about bananas. And Jimmy's like, I thought Brian was weird before. Now we're talking about freaking bananas. I got to get this guy off of my show already. But bear with me for another minute. So he says that we are eating our bananas raw. Like, how absurd is this getting? And then he sits there and says, you all look at this stem on the top. I'm ruining the TED Talk, but come on, you want to go it. So you break that thing on the top and it kind of bends, and sometimes you have to do it, and then you mush the top of the banana and it sucks. And then he's like, you actually are supposed to open it from the bottom, and it just like magically like unpeels. And I'm thinking in my mind's eye, as I'm saying this, I'm a stubborn creature of habit. And if I had a banana here, I would totally not listen to it. I'm just like, conditions, I still do it wrong and just struggle and suffer.
Okay.
But did he say you have to build the next Twitter and large language models and cybersecurity and AI and stupid tech buzzwords? No. You go to the grocery store or someplace that grows bananas, you get the freaking banana from the tree or the store shelf, and then you did not ask ChatGPT what to do, which is not your overlord, by the way. Please use your brains, people. And that is innovation. Innovation is a new, fresh way of looking at stuff. And more people are included and are brought to the table, which is why it's the Innovation Summit, the Innovate Summit, not Technology Summit. That is a very important part, because when you bring different industries together and you say, you don't have to be in pure technology or high technology or AI or deep tech or cyber, whatever. You don't have to be in that industry. That doesn't have to be your career. And you could be a teacher, you could work on farmland, and you could do innovate stuff that makes the world better, because you might be onto something that is a quantum leap in how we do stuff now compared to the incremental progress that technology allows us to do and to amplify.
Right. And then and I love that, because again, it allows people to really understand what their true power potential can be.
Correct. And it allows more people to unlock it, as opposed to, I can't go to those tech conference.
Yeah, and again, nothing against tech, because I'm a big tech head, but yeah, they have definitely hijacked some very key words that could be relevant to everyone, that should be relevant, I should say.
I don't like when tech tries to take over the world. Like, somebody in Silicon Valley land and realm of thought said that software is eating the world. And I think that's an unhealthy way to look at the world, because you do not want society to be one-dimensional in anything. Because different people have different talents and bring different stuff to the table. That's how it works. That is what diversity of thought means. Different people have different talents. Some people have supersets of things that they can bring together and build new things. And that's really amazing. But tech is one of the things that's at the table, not every.
Wow. I mean, you and I can go on forever here.
Let's do it.
So we're going to have to do a part 2.
Oh, sure. Fine.
So let's get ready to wrap this up. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you're enjoying this. You know, again, this is how Brian and I get together and we chat, and we're like two.
You're just watching us say whatever we can say.
bounce all over the place, but at the end we're like, wow, we should have recorded that.
I think we captured it well, man.
Which is how we ended up on this, on this here. And yes, I will be locking the Innovate date into my calendar, so we will be meeting up there. And but let's go ahead and wrap it up here. So, what do you think is your superpower? Some people get they're like, I don't really like that question. I don't have a superpower. And some people love it. So I don't know where you fall on the spectrum. What do you think is your superpower?
I don't like forced questions, but I do have a superpower. I think that I'm in the right thing for what I do. I think that I'm able to look at a person and see their talents, and I can evaluate and judge people's ability to speak and communicate messages. And a lot of times they, as a person, as a business, as an industry, are not always very good at telling their story, because it's either filled with complicated jargon to make them feel smarter than everybody and go right over their head instead of talking to the people they're trying to reach. So I enjoy simplification. Simplicity is what makes the world actually work. as opposed to overtelling things that don't actually matter. And then we visualize it and get media and stuff like that. So, like I said, I feel like where we're going with Innovate is kind of rounding out that, where there's sort of like a digital presence and a digital product, if you will. Well, here, I really enjoy the power of my network, expanding my network, understanding what that means, understanding that LinkedIn is not a video game to see how many people I can have. And I challenged a lot of people, especially during the pandemic. I said, this is not a video game for boring people that don't like better video games. So how about, if you couldn't meet anybody new, do you ever go back and check in with how people are doing? Especially when everybody was like in the fetal position, crying on the floor because they couldn't go out and they're trying to do Zoom school and God knows what else, not get dressed anymore, all that crap. But there's
I'm still only half dressed.
Well, I wasn't going to go there, but yeah, there was actually a word that came out in Merriam-Webster, I think it was, called goblin mode.
Okay.
It's like the lowest echelon of existence, where we just sit around like goblins and we're all unkempt and like don't get haircuts and it's crap. It's terrible.
Okay.
Exiting that. So I really think that like being able to go beyond how people present and try to help them as an outside objective observer, I'd say is my superpower. And I like to do this in a way that's partially kind and partially like Odo New York, like in your face, where it's like, all right, this, if you don't mind, you're kind of doing this horribly wrong.
Mm-hmm. Well, I know I said was about the end, but I got to tap into this for a second because I think a lot of people can benefit from this next question because you're absolutely right. You know, we're building up all of these relationships kind of is by connecting with people on LinkedIn per se, for all of us B2B people.
Right.
But how often do we go back and say how and actually have authentic conversation with them, not just immediate sales pitch or some crazy crap like that? How do you suggest people go back? Because I'm bringing this up because I follow a few people that have tens of thousands of followers on there, maybe even hundreds. And then when they post, and again, if I look at my numbers, even if they get 50, 60 likes, when you've followed by 60,000 people, you should have a lot more. That's really not a good percentage at all.
Yes.
And that's a prime example of you want people to follow you, but you don't ever do anything beyond that.
Correct. I don't have I'm not going to reduce it to a number. Check in with people every 6 months. No, I think that's a really good question.
And again, you may not, I know I just sprung it on you, but this is something that I've been thinking about. I'm like, as I build up my following, I'm like, what's a better way of actually keeping, because it can be hard, especially when you get those numbers up. Oh, yeah, okay.
I was complimenting you, but I have answers for all sorts of stuff. So first is, let me guide you through where my head is at. First is to be memorable. Like, why are people connecting you with you in the first place? If you're not memorable one-on-one, you're forgettable, you're not top of mind, and then you're probably not going to remember to follow up with that person. They're going to stop following you. But there's 8 billion people on the planet, Jimmy. We can't meet everybody. We're not going to meet 1 billion. We're probably not going to meet 1 million. So how do we meet people? Fine. I mean, let me check my schedule. Oh, I can't have 500 million phone calls today. All right. I guess we'll concede that point. So here's the thing. You can communicate with humanity with places like LinkedIn. There's 1 billion people in LinkedIn. That's pretty damn good. So you have the ability to scale the ability to converse with people by doing things like podcasts and live streams, videos and speeches and all of this stuff for content, the written word, whatever way that you like to have that manifest. And then you actually are communicating at scale where you can have a message that's going out to everybody. When you make content that's so good that people feel like you're talking to them and there isn't somebody else in the world, you've done it. But to your point about so when do you check back in with people? When you think that you're thinking about them. It shouldn't be contrived. So sometimes I will, I'm not going to say doom scroll on LinkedIn, but I'll scroll through and I might go through multiple networks and I'll just see somebody and I'll see what they're doing. and I'll be like, wow, that's a really happy moment. That's a really sad moment. That's a fake veneer of a moment that I know that you're full of crap, and that's not really how you're feeling. I think if you're really paying attention, like you can see any of these things that are happening, because some people share more or less or guarded about their lives. And I think sometimes you'll see that there's like a pattern where it's like somebody is markedly different in how they're communicating now compared to how they were. And sometimes like some of my friends, I'll compliment them like, wow, you've really put this together. And that person will have felt heard, not here's my evil CRM system that runs the world, and a data scientist told me that I should reach out every 6.2 months. And it's like, okay, I mean, I'm sorry your life is that terrible. But yes, I'm sure there are numbers to it and all of that, and people could probably say that. But I think that people know when you're not reaching out for a reason. And I think that I will tell you something that I find really interesting. So the number that you just talked about, what I would call interaction rate, if we look at the number of people reacting to something, liking something, sharing something, commenting over the amount of total following, is better than the vanity numbers of how many people they brag about. I love the people that in their profile, they say how many followers they have. I'm like, it's not exactly an achievement. Okay, I get it. People like numbers. But here's the thing. What if I send you a note on LinkedIn? I said LinkedIn 100 million times. So like, obviously I like LinkedIn because it's a good network for business. And I don't know, people do weirder things on Facebook and Twitter and X or whatever we're supposed to call it these days. I'm not an Instagram model. I don't really have the hair for it.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, right. We can commiserate in that. So specifically LinkedIn, if I say, hey, Jimmy, I was thinking of you and it's been a minute. Is Jimmy going to see, if Jimmy's awake, is Jimmy going to see it? And is Jimmy within like a matter of 2 minutes going to see it, smile a little bit, and like positively write back to me? Not like write back to me or not, but like write back to me with like a positive frame of mind. Right? In a book that's somewhere trapped in my head, I call that the renown metric. It's not a numbers game. Is somebody that interested in you that you've left enough of their mark in their mind that they feel positively inclined to write back to you and quickly? And when the answer is yes, you've kind of figured out that cadence. It's a really long way to say. No, it's just not a number, but I'm showing my math.
And I like that. And I guess that kind of also goes back to the fact that, I just spoke at an event in Queens. Cool. And there was a small group of people, and one of the speakers was like, I thought there would be more people. And I responded back, I go, I really don't care about the amount of people. I care about the quality of the people that are in the room. I go, because I don't need to walk out with everybody's number. I just need 2 to 3, relationships that I think would be great. And now that was worth the whole trip. Right. And
it could be one person, and you might know them forever. You might know them for decades. It could be the difference of your whole life. Why do people obsess about big numbers?
Sure. It's another, like you said, it's another metric. It's a good one, but the question is, what are you going to do with it? I think that's always the. But yeah, so this has been an amazing conversation. Again, I can't wait to do more, to chat with you again, even probably the small conversation we're going to have after this podcast.
Oh, yeah. It's a journey. We're just getting started, baby.
So how can people connect with you?
Yes. So there's too many people named Brian Wallace. And since I already said I'm not in the mafia, so we're not offing all of these people. Usually, though, when you Google Brian Wallace, I actually do come up first nowadays. I didn't check it today.
I'm gonna Google you after this. I just want to see where you are.
But because there are too many Brian Wallaces, I'm not saying there's just one. It's no weird Highlander moment. I usually go by NowSourcing on most socials, so you can always see me across social, especially LinkedIn, under NowSourcing. You can always go to nowsourcing.com, and you can always check out the event at theinnovatesummit.com.
I was going to say, I was going to pull that up. And are they able to register now? I know it's only August as of this recording and it's not till next year, but.
That's right. It is the 3rd week in May, and we're still building out the program. So anybody that wants to attend, see what it's all about, that wants to throw their hat in the ring to speak, that wants to sponsor, that wants to participate in some way and draw together some of the brightest minds in the world in a really cool, underrated venue of a $200 million waterfront built for 80,000 people. we'll have to talk about that a little more. Come see what we're about.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I recommend highly, ladies and gentlemen, that you try to make your way there. It's just going to be, and again, I was so sad I missed it, but I saw a few of the pictures, and you even had a couple of my other colleagues that I didn't know that we had in common that were there. I was just like, what? Troy's there? I was like,
Jimmy, be sad about it. Then you'll just show up better next year. That's fine.
And Troy was also a speaker on the Impact Us All podcast. So again, there's like 0 degrees of separation going on around here.
I'm sure Troy was a fabulous guest. Troy's good people. I love him. Yep.
Absolutely. All right. So any final words you want to leave for the audience before I let you go?
Oof. Don't hold back. I think that we are our own worst enemies, and we're afraid of how people are going to perceive us. And I don't know what everybody's waiting for. I think that sometimes people are trapped in the machinations of their day-to-day. There's an old school internet guy, like we're talking like when YouTube was coming out guy, that nobody thinks about anymore. And his name is Ze Frank. Zefrank.
Okay.
And he has, I'm looking up how to, no, I almost said the wrong word. He has a 3-minute video that's been out at the time of this recording about 12 years. So it's not new, but 12 years ago was his comeback. So he's super OG internet here, right?
Okay.
And the thing that you're going to want to Google or search in YouTube is an invocation for beginnings. And it's a wonderful way of getting unstuck because there are multiple seasons of our lives and careers and where we go and what we do, that sometimes people need the inspiration and permission for greatness. I will say, I'll ruin something that I give in a lot of in-person speeches. So I tell everybody, I give people permission to unlock that by saying everybody doesn't give themselves permission because they're afraid of looking bad. And I tell everybody to raise their hand as high as they can. And then they go like this, or like some people try to do that. And it's not going to work because like we're just on recording here. But then I say, now raise it higher. And then everybody always has like another like 6 to 12 inches. Or some people stand on the chair. I'm just like, why did you need me to say that? What were you afraid of? And it's a social experiment that I, aside from a couple people that cheat that have heard me say it before, right? Or just that they are not inhibited. By and large, humanity is stuck in them. So you now have permission to make that impact if we can bring it on home.
Well, it was an absolute pleasure, as always, Brian, to chat with you. And again, between the resources and the gems and the knowledge that you shared, I hope everyone got a lot out of today. Again, I talk to you not as frequently as I should, but I talked to you enough where, again, here's another conversation that I still took away a lot, so I thank you for that. And I hope everyone else is doing so as well. So you guys know the deal. At the end of the day, we need to, give us one word to describe this episode. Give us a rating. I hope it's a good rating. It doesn't have to be, but I hope so.
Crossed.
And we can continue to bring these amazing conversations to light for you around impact. Like Brian said, impact. Everybody can have impact, so again, if you have to go back and listen to this again, I think it's worth it. And just like you said, just do it, just take action. Just make it happen, ladies and gentlemen, make the impact. And we want to read about you. We want to see how the impact that you put in the world affects our lives. That's why this is called the Impact Us All Business Podcast. And I do like one more thing I want to tap into with you is, I think you said something which was great. You're like, you wanted to preference that I'm going to talk about impact, but I'm going to start with personal because, again, this is the business podcast, but everything that you do business does affect you personally.
Of course, everybody's like, cool business. Tell me about yourself. Okay, let's start at the start. Got it. Everybody came from somewhere.
Absolutely. So with that being said, we will wish you well, and I look forward to seeing you in our next episode of the Impact Us All Business Podcast. I'm Jimmy Newson, and with our special guest, Brian Wallace, have an amazing, impactful day. And that brings us to the end of another enlightening journey here on the Impact Us All Business Podcast. Every story we've shared, every insight gained, is a step towards creating a world where business becomes a beacon of positive change. Your time with us is more than just listening. It's about becoming part of a movement that values growth, innovation, and the incredible impact we can have when we come together. If you're ready to be a part of this journey every step of the way, we have 3 small favors to ask. 1, please subscribe to our podcast. It's the easiest way to ensure that you never miss an episode filled with stories and strategies that matter to you. 2, leave us a review, even if it's just 1 word. Your feedback helps us grow and continue bringing you content that inspires and empowers. And 3, rate our podcast. Your ratings help others find us, expanding our community of impactors who, just like you, want to make a difference in the world. Every step you take with us is a step towards impactful change. Your voice, your action, and your participation, it all adds up to a global movement. Let's continue to reshape the world, one business, one idea, one story at a time. Together, we can impact us all. See you in the next episode.